Protests and looting have broken out in Minnesota as Black Lives Matter supporters congregate together in support of Dante Wright, who was killed by a police officer on Sunday.
These are wild times, or dangerous times that we're living in, especially when you consider the fact that people seemingly have lost all their sense of values. But there are people out there with tremendous voices and platforms that I think are doing some great work.
They want to take out Christians. They want to take out the Arabs who live peacefully here in Israel.
I always talk about how the border is wide open, but I really think I underestimated even just how much it is. Like, you go there and you see the holes in the ground for when people just dug under where there is a tiny little fence. It's like, it's not even a wall, it's a fence that you can climb over that Obama built years ago. So it's honestly pathetic to see the lack of security that we have going into our country and just how easy it is for somebody to cross over.
These people who say they're anti-bully, they turn out to be pretty big bullies. It's amazing how many of these fat people are on a starvation diet now on these protests. And I'm like, you guys could live off the fat of the land for 6 weeks.
Let me tell you, as somebody who was a part of that BLM activism world, the only addiction you're really appeasing is your own narcissism, because you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for this cause that you're pretending to care so much about. Because if you actually cared about the cause, you would research what you're talking about. And the second you do some objective research, you're going to debunk yourself. I know, because I did that too.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. Man, it's always fun to come and just sit down and have some good conversations. And we're going to do that today with a very special guest. Before we get into it, I want to remind you that we're living in a crazy world. I don't think you need reminding. I don't think you need to know that. I think some of you have become a little bit hopeless. However, you're thinking that our world can't change and our culture can't be saved. But it can be. I'm optimistic. I believe that there's some good things on the horizon. These are wild times, or dangerous times that we're living in, especially when you consider the fact that people seemingly have lost all their sense of values and there's just no underpinning for society anymore, no standard for good. But there are people out there with tremendous voices and platforms that I think are doing some great work, and they're winning some people over to logical, critical thinking. And so I'm excited to be able to bring those voices to you and have the opportunity to just kind of, chill out and hang out and have some good conversations with folks. And I hope you're enjoying those as well. If you are, please go over to where podcasts are offered. Leave us a 5-star rating. It's what we deserve. And also leave a good review. Leave a bad review. I don't care. Let's start that conversation. I want you to be honest with the things that are being said here. If things need to be corrected, correct them. I love to push back a little bit. We'll have a good little conversation about those, and we may even talk about them on the show. But I hope you're enjoying this long-form content of conversations that we're having with some of who I think some of the best critical thinkers and greatest minds that America has to offer right now. And one of those joins us today via streaming, and gosh, I hope we've had so many different troubles. The devil lives in this technology, but you just never know how it goes. Xaviaer Durousseau, man, Xavier, how are you, my friend? It's good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you. I'm blessed and highly favored. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for coming. I've been looking forward to having you on. We scheduled this, I guess, about a month ago or something, and I've just kind of been counting the days. And I love following you, specifically on Instagram. You're at Xavier, right? Is that right?
Yes, it's just unique spelling. Had an error on my birth certificate, but my mom liked it. But it's Xaviaer. So just make sure you get that extra A in there.
You got to have the extra A. I've done that a couple of times in spelling it when I'm making my notes in my phone, everything. And I tell people, I said, it's Xaviaer. Was it really a misspelling on the birth certificate?
It was. My mom had an attitude. She had just given birth. She only had a girl name picked out because she was trying to manifest having a girl. Ended up having me. So then it was just a whole fiasco in the hospital that day.
Well, I know there's those of you out there watching the show and you see or you hear Xavier, you hear his name, and you're like, I know that guy. You know, because he's a PragerU personality. And anytime I say that they're connected with PragerU, you know you're dealing with somebody of superior intellect, because the crew over at PragerU, they don't just pick anybody over there to be a spokesperson for them. And so, you've seen him on Fox, you've seen him on Newsmax. He's got an incredible story that I want to get into. You and I were supposed to be on some trips together, and I failed. I had a busy schedule. I couldn't change it around. I think there was an Israel trip. I'm still hoping to get over there with that crew. And then recently at the border, I was hoping to see you down there. Your content from the border is incredible, and I'm all of the content is incredible. But was that your first trip down to the American southern border, or had you been there before?
That was my first trip down to the border, and I was absolutely mortified. Like, I always talk about how the border is wide open, but I really think I underestimated even just how much it is. Like, you go there and you see the holes in the ground for when people just dug under where there is a tiny little fence. Yeah. It's like, it's not even a wall, it's a fence that you can climb over that Obama built years ago. So it's honestly pathetic to see the lack of security that we have going into our country and just how easy it is for somebody to cross over.
Yeah, I've seen the Obama fence, and I've walked to the end of it, where you walk to the end of it, and then there's just kind of like a barbed wire thing that anybody can just kind of cross over in different spots, and then you see the wall that was being constructed under Donald Trump. You've got a great video where you're comparing the two on your social media. It's a sad situation, right? When you go there and it's such an eye-opening experience, I don't think people realize how wide open the border is. And when you see that, you're like, man, we're in trouble. Elon Musk just posted the other day on X. He said 2024 is potentially the last U.S. election that will be decided by American citizens because of our open border situation. I don't know where you fall on this issue. I'm wondering if if elections are being decided by American citizens now. But you have to admit that's a scary thing we're living in. When you look at the situation of America right now, I'm interested in your perspective because I want you to tell me your story, because you tell the thing about how you kind of accidentally red-pilled yourself. You're a self-described, you were a socialist Democrat. You were a BLM activist, right? Tell me your story. How does one go from that, what I'll call an extreme, to kind of where you're living and residing right now mentally? How do you go to that route? You guys know that I love Patriot Mobile. They are good friends and great patriots. And they realize that Americans are tired. They're tired and frustrated by the stalling economy, the inflation, the endless wars, the relentless assault on our values. And thankfully, folks over at Patriot Mobile, they got your back. They still believe in America. They believe in our Constitution. And I'm so proud over the years to have partnered with them and continue to do it, because Patriot Mobile, they're on the front lines, man. They're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're fighting for the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, our military and first responder heroes. I want you to take a stand with them on conservative causes and put America first by switching over to Patriot Mobile today. You're going to get the same nationwide coverage as the big providers, because Patriot Mobile, they operate on all three major networks, plus they back their service with a full coverage guarantee. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team will take care of you. They will find the best plan for your needs. You can keep your number, keep your phone, or you can upgrade, and they'll help. Go to patriotmobile.com/Chad or call them 972-PATRIOT. You do it right now, you get a free month when you use the offer code CHAD. I spell it Chad. Use that offer code and don't get fooled by the other providers pretending to share your values or have the same coverage. They don't, and they can't. So join me. Switch to America's only Christian conservative mobile provider. That's Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Chad. Call them 972-PATRIOT. Get your free month of service today. Use that promo code Chad. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
Yeah, of course. So just for a little context, because people are always like, well, how were you naive enough to even be a BLM activist in the first place? So I always describe my backstory as like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but backwards, where I was living in Southside Chicago. We were in the hood, the trenches. Like, my neighbor was Chief Keef. If you know, you know. If you don't, God bless you. We were in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods out there. My eldest brother got into trouble like one time. So then we picked up and moved to the middle of nowhere cornfields of central Illinois, where it was a town of maybe 10,000 people. It was 95% white. Well, with that being said, my dad has always been a far leftist, still is a far leftist. I have a lot of family members who are radical leftists who just hate white people. I have an uncle who refers to white people as blue-eyed, red-headed devils. I remember being told as a kid all the time, like, the different rules for how you navigate being around white people. And I didn't have that resentment in my heart. But what I was always being told was basically critical race theory before I knew what critical race theory was. So growing up, I was sitting in a classroom full of white kids, and I was told that no matter what, no matter how many friends I have, no matter how nice they are to me, and how popular I am in my little school, I'm still supposed to view myself as a Black person first. So that gave me a bit of an identity crisis because I felt like I was going to be too Black for the white kids and then too white for the Black kids when I went back to Chicago. So as I got into high school and went into college, that whole story of I just wanted to find my identity. And I felt like I had to identify with all these woke causes, Black causes. The more woke, the better. And I felt like that was my way of getting that validation. So then you fast forward to 2020, I was literally just bored during the pandemic. And my friends and I watched this reality show on Netflix, and they told me to apply for it. And I was like, sure. So I applied. And how I ended up being cast for the show is they wanted me to essentially be the BLM activist who teaches other people how to be an ally and an activist for BLM and these different woke causes. So in the process of doing that, I was like, whoa, I have months getting ready for the show. I need to be prepared for a debate. I need to be prepared for any counter arguments that might come my way. So I was actually going to make an entire series debunking just people like Candace Owens, but really debunking PragerU just at large. And in the process of that, I ended up one by one debunking myself, and I accidentally dismantled the entire indoctrination that I had been given my entire life. So that was the most humbling experience I could have possibly went through. And 3 days before I was supposed to fly out to London to film this reality show, I completely backed out. That was in October of 2020. I backed out of the show. I saw what happened in November of 2020. I wasn't happy. And then I was like, you know what? I planned my whole life about how I was going to become this political activist anyway. Why don't I take this as an opportunity and aside from God to go out and spread the truth that I've learned and make people aware of my story and just hope that I can maybe bring some more people to the side of common sense. So I started making content in 2021, and it's been a journey ever since.
I would say that it has been. How humbling of an experience was that when you go, dang, I'm wrong?
Oh, I was mortified. It's funny because it's like now it has a happy ending because I ended up on the right side of history, first of all, but also like I ended up surviving. I was so appalled because there I was 23 years old at the time, almost 24. And I'm looking around, I'm like, wow, I know nothing about anything. And I need to like start from the ABCs of our history and how this country actually works and how money actually works. And pretty much every single woke cause that I was behind, I had to step back and recognize like, okay, there's an agenda behind all of that, because there were already things that weren't making sense to me. I was a BLM activist, but I'm seeing the looting and the rioting. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I'm like, even just from if you're going with the Marxist ideology of breaking down these buildings, I mean, you're tearing up Black communities, you're tearing down Black businesses. And what the first big thing that blew my mind is I'm like, where is the money going? We raised $100 million in 2020 alone, but not a single, to this day, a Black community, a Black business, or a victim of police brutality, aka a criminal that put themselves in that situation, none of them ever saw a dollar of that money. And because I started asking those questions back in 2020, I was told that I didn't have my head in the game. I was told that I sounded like a traitor and that I need to stay focused on the mission, which is getting more money and causing more chaos. And I just had enough with that.
That's fascinating to me. You know, like I look at, I'll tell you what, I was in church Sunday morning, and the pastor there was preaching out of the book of Proverbs about how, you know, people with deceptive words, you know, and ultimately if you look at how it appears to be wise with the words they're using, but the consequences of it afterwards were really nefarious. They were bad. And he actually brought up BLM as an example. He said, do I believe in the phrase Black Lives Matter? He said, of course I do. I believe that. I mean, that's fundamentally true. Of course, Black Lives Matter. He said, now, that was the phrase they used because, again, if you speak out against that, how dare you say something so evil to say that Black lives don't matter, right? And he says, but if you take that organization, they knew what they were doing because they spoke words that looked to be good, but there was deception in their heart, and they created an organization that was very deceptive to the point where you brought up the money issue. It fascinates me now, Xavier, that people still, because I get the pushback on social media, and I look at people's profiles, and they still list BLM in their profile, and I can remember being in, I think it was 2020. It might have been 2019. Either way, it was 2020. I was in Tulsa, and there was a BLM rally that was there, And I watched this parade of about 700 people walk past. And I promise you, because I was specifically looking for this, there was only one black person in this crowd. I'm like, what is going on here? Why? Like, why? I can kind of piece together why, the white people are doing this thing to appear allies. I can kind of piece that together. But after everything that's been revealed, why are people still even putting that in their profiles as a show of support? I hope you guys have been enjoying your summer. There's so much going on. There's so many things to do, so many activities, and that's just the way life is, it seems, no matter what season of the year it is. But I will tell you, sometimes you get caught up and you want to still eat good, and you don't want to get caught up in a whole lot of shopping and meal prep and expensive stuff that you got to deal with and take up your time. I want you to fuel up for life and use Factor's no prep, no mess meals, and you can also meet your wellness goals on time and lose the weight you want to lose or maintain where you want to be with their chef-crafted meals, like their Calorie Smart, their Protein Plus, their keto meals, Factor's fresh, never frozen meals. They're dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. And let me tell you something, they're delicious. I was just talking to my mother the other day. I asked her, I said, do you still enjoy your Factor meals? She says, absolutely, we love them. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. So I want you to make today a kickstart for a new healthy routine. There's nothing to wait for. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from, every single meal every week that shows up at your home is always going to be a new flavor to explore. So you can crush your wellness goals. You got those dietitian approved meals, ingredients you can trust, and don't forget, it's delicious. Breakfast, dessert, lunches, dinners, stay fueled, easy, nutritious meals. Head over to factormeals.com/Chad50 and use code Chad50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code Chad50 at factormeals.com/Chad50. Get 50% off your first box plus that 20% off the next month while your subscription is active. Factor Meals, check them out.
Because people are trying to stick with their guns. And, a lot of white people have been indoctrinated with this belief that they need to be guilty for something that happened 200 years ago, as if they even know who their great-great-great-great-grandfather is. It's like, let's be serious. You probably don't. Right. But, they have this thing now where it's one of two things. It's either the white guilt where they've been told that the only way that they're allowed to sleep at night is if they go and appease themselves with the white guilt by sticking with this BLM narrative and refusing to do any research outside of confirmation bias. And then you have the other side of people who just are either getting paid for this or it's just for their own ego because they think that it makes them look better. And when everybody else finally took a step back, it was like, okay, BLM is fraudulent because, like you said, the left is they're just masters of linguistics. They're very good at making things sound so polished and so crisp and like this is something either you have to do or you're a bigot. But there's a whole lot of nuance there, and there's a whole lot that you need to look at beyond the surface level. But these people refuse to look beyond the surface level because they're afraid of slipping into accidentally uncovering the truth in the way that I did. And, I wonder how long would I have went before actually doing my research more objectively if it wasn't for that show. So I'm very grateful that I actually went and I studied the counter arguments for the first time. I actually heard out conservatives for the first time and just common sense for the first time. And it blew my mind. A lot of people don't want that experience because I know I dealt with a lot of backlash from my family, from my friends, and everybody in between, simply because I wasn't a leftist and a progressive anymore. So I can imagine these people, they're a little cowardly. They're not willing to stand on what they believe in. But I just give people the advice. It's like, you can't sit here and be concerned that they're booing you because you have to recognize what they're cheering for. And what they're cheering for is the downfall of society and racial division.
Are you one of the ones, would you agree that America was making progressive strides in a positive way until Barack Obama came along? I mean, if you looked at, what are your thoughts on that? Because I thought that I just saw this stark contrast begin to happen under the Obama presidency, where it's like certain things were kind of settled issues. I'm not saying racism didn't exist. It always will because people are evil. There's always an element of that in society and the stupidity that just pervades in certain areas. But or with certain people's hearts. But did you see more and more of that, or is that too simplistic of a way of looking at it?
I do see it a bit in that way. I was pretty young during the Obama administration, but I do remember when Obama won, that was like a moment for me I'll never forget as a Black person, because I remember all the people, basically, like, if we're totally going to be honest about it, a lot of people voted for Obama, because they just wanted to prove finally that America is not a racist country.
True.
We haven't been a racist country in a very, very long time. So when Obama first won, I feel like on that day, there was a bit of a sigh of relief of, okay, we have made enough progress. But then after that, it became more and more and more problematic. And I do think that that was by design, because the Obama campaign was planting the seeds for that in the first place. Because one of the things that everybody united behind Obama for was his anti-bullying campaign. And I believe it's Ben Shapiro has a fantastic book about this concept, how they created this bullying umbrella. And if there's anything that everybody in the United States is against altogether, we all can't stand a bully. But now they've taken that concept and they add in all these different elements. They add in transphobia, homophobia, racism, bigotry, misogyny, like xenophobia, like all these different things they have now put under this umbrella. And what that has done, it's so chaotic that it's made the whole situation overcomplicated. So instead of looking at something at race as, oh, it's as simple as we have different skin colors, it's not deeper than that. Now we have all these nuances and microaggressions and all these things that are so irrelevant. But the Obama administration the left has continuously tried to resurface all of that. And what they're ultimately doing is they've destroyed MLK's dream. Now it's a nightmare again.
I like that phrase, bully umbrella. Bully umbrella. And it's so true. It's just a canopy, right? They've just kind of put everybody in that circus tent. And whatever they can label you and marginalize you with, that's the whole deal. You're the bully.
Right, and that's why they have the flags to go with it. I mean, what was the point of adding in a black and a brown stripe to the LGBT flag? We didn't ask to be a part of that. Like, that has nothing to do with us. That's not our business. So you're telling Black people that it's like, oh, you're inherently a part of the LGBT simply because you're Black. It's like, what? And then now, like, the flag has gotten so complicated. It's like, who isn't marginalized? It's like they constantly want you to feel like you're a part of this outside group and like you're inferior. I've been Black for 27 years, and at no point have I been inferior to a white person. So this narrative is so tired, it's late, and it's played out.
It's becoming white noise, to use a phrase, in regards to that. It just kind of, people have heard it over and over again. So the concept of racism just gets, blurred out. A very real thing gets played down to the point of being watered down to where it doesn't exist anymore. And folks are just tired of it culturally. That's a good example, Xavier. I can remember years ago when they were talking about the military paying for people's trans surgeries. And so people were wanting to join the military so they could get transition surgeries, and the government was going to pay for it. And I made a video about that. And I had a friend of mine who is a lesbian, and she sent me a message, and she was kind of reprimanding me for saying that. And I said, let me stop. I said, why do you care? Like, why does this bother you? You're not trans. This has nothing to do with you. She goes, well, I'm lumped in. I'm lumped in with the community, the L's and the G's and the B's. I said, why? Why let yourself get lumped in? So I thought that was fascinating when they added a black and brown stripe to the deal. I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything. You go back to 2020, you talk about being bored during COVID. I wish I could say the 2020 riots and protests, the summer of love, was because people were bored. But it was a very, as we see the protests going on right now, it was a very strategic thing, post George Floyd. I was just in Minneapolis, and we happened to drive past the place where the George Floyd thing happened. Minneapolis, once a beautiful city, is not a beautiful city anymore. I call it Little Mogadishu because of Clinton and Obama bringing so many of the Somalian refugees in there. Now, of course, we have Rashida Tlaib, who represents that area. And it's just really gone downhill. It's rough in a bad way. But, you see that stuff. And what they did is they found a catalyst in George Floyd, right? That they could go out and they could protest like this. But it was a strategic thing. And it sort of, do you think that's sort of kind of become a pattern for protests, that we're going to see more and more of that? Like, you're talking about the southern border. See, I think that they've been hoping for for a Jorge Floyd to happen. Some illegal coming across gets murdered by somebody or something. I think they've been wanting that. But now I think they've found it in these college protests that we see on the campuses right now. We start to see a pattern. Do you think that there's a pattern there?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I can go back to my tweets in the last 2 years and just recognize that I've been saying, and a lot of people have been saying for a while, that 2024 was going to have its own version of BLM because they couldn't rehash BLM again. They took too many L's, they were exposed too many times, and BLM was laid to rest. I mean, Candace Owens even had a funeral theme party for BLM because it's just done. It's like anybody with common sense and with critical objective thinking knows that BLM should be remaining in the past at this point. But what they've done now is they've rebranded. What BLM has done is they've become more extreme, they've become more aggressive and more just completely ignorant about the things they're screaming about. And they're the Free Palestine crowd. A lot of the same people that you're seeing in that crowd, they definitely were the people who were loudest and or the least informed when it came to the BLM riots. Because I broke into the UCLA encampments. I went there undercover in disguise and with my friend Cam Higbee, and we got a lot of footage. We talked to a lot of people, and we were able to see back there what's actually going on here. I was having flashbacks to my BLM protesting days. That was the most ghetto mess I ever participated in. I wasn't happy to be back there. But when I was there, it was a lot of people who I feel bad for them because there was like freshmen and sophomores, these like soy boys who can't do a single pull-up or push-up. And then you have all these girls who just like want to be a part of any cause possible, but they have no idea what's going on. Israel, there was a Zionist or pro-Zionist, not encampment, but a display right in front of the encampment where they were showing videos of what happened on October 7th. And a lot of the people inside the pro-Palestine encampment, they were looking at that and going like, what is playing on that video? Some of them didn't even know what October 7th was. So it goes back to BLM, where a lot of people still to this day don't know the real story of George Floyd. There are people who still think that Breonna Taylor was a nurse sleeping in her bed and that they went to the wrong house and shot in unwarranted. It's like that is so far from the truth, but these people are not informed. So yes, the left is taking full advantage of that. They're capitalizing on this social cause that people want to get behind, and they're treating the Palestinian-Israel conflict as a black and white issue, as if Israelis are even really white at large, and they're turning it into this oppression narrative so that BLM crowd that is now more extreme than ever can help radicalize this upcoming election.
You mentioned earlier talking about white guilt. Do you think it's a guilt thing, or is it an actual compassion thing? Like these people are like, oh, I just feel like there's so many marginalized people out there and I need to use my voice to speak out for them. Or is it just I'm bored? Or is it I just need to be a part of a community? Or I was bullied in high school and now I've got a chance to be a bully myself? Because these people who say they're anti-bully, they turn out to be pretty big bullies.
Yeah.
What do you think's motivating these kids?
I think it's all of the above. I think you have some people who are just desperate for a sense of belonging, a sense of being a part of a crowd. And the thing is once you join one group, you have to join the rest. Like I could look at the people at that UCLA encampment and been like, I know every single club that all of you were in because you're all in the same clubs together. Because once you join one, you're expected to join the rest. And if you don't join one, if there's one issue you disagree with the left on, you're kicked out of the cult. So a lot of them, they just group together, link arms, and they go and they fight for causes that are rooting for their own downfall ultimately. But then you have some people who literally just feel guilty. They just feel like they're white and they have to appease themselves. And then you have people who are just addicted to the dopamine high of being an activist. Some people, like, there's just nothing that empowers them more than getting a sign and yelling about something. It's their way of just feeling like they have purpose in the world. But let me tell you, as somebody who was a part of that BLM activism world, the only addiction you're really appeasing is your own narcissism, because you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for this cause that you're pretending to care so much about. Because if you actually cared about the cause, you would research what you're talking about. And the second you do some objective research, you're going to debunk yourself. I know, because I did that too.
I don't know that most people don't have the critical thinking skills or the honesty that you do. So, I love to sit there and think maybe these people will grow out of it, but I don't think so.
Some of them will, but the thing is we can't depend on that anymore. One thing that conservatives did for too long is, and because for a while it was true, is we say like, okay, when you're young, you have a heart, so you're a liberal. When you're older, you have understanding, you have a brain, so you become conservative. But what's happening now is you have so many liberals in these indoctrination camps in college where people are literally going to college, not for a degree, but just to extend their childhood pretty much that much more. They get all these progressive ideologies, but then they take them to the workforce. So instead of the workforce beating out some of that weak beta behavior out of these individuals, it's flipping to where now every single progressive college graduate is just an HR nightmare waiting to happen, to now you're having to put your pronouns in your resume or they're not even going to look at it. So we have to keep being loud voices who are screaming the truth louder than the lies. Otherwise, we're going to get to a point where all the workforces are going to be so progressive that it's just not, they're not going to outgrow it anymore. But there are some people who I think with some maturity and a little bit of common sense, I'm hopeful for them, especially in Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Yeah, I hope that's true. I really do. And I do have optimistic hope. I really do. I speak with too many young voices, and I know you do as well. You have to be encouraged with some of these folks that are coming along. But some of these folks that are like, I look at the videos like Brandon Tatum. He posted a reaction video that I saw this morning where there's this gay guy and he's got his tank top on and he's like, I just don't believe Hamas hates me. I don't believe it. I believe if I were there, I would be perfectly fine. I would be accepted. And Brandon said, then go, I'll pay. But I want you to wear a body cam so we can all live stream what's going to happen to you because you're going to get murdered. I'll hire a driver to drive you most of the way. You walk yourself in. But because we don't want the driver to get hurt, but I'll do it. I'll pay for you business class, first class, whatever, for you to go. The deception is real. And I know those are extreme cases, but then I see this group of people making the demands of the college president Wheeler, and they're I call them the snap brigade, when they started making their demands and they make a point instead of clapping, which would send them into a safe space, they started doing their little snaps, and they're all wearing their little shamog scarves that they bought on Amazon.com, which makes them terrible little Marxists. And I'm like, these people, and you made the reference to, here's a guy standing there making his little demands. He should be wearing a B-cup bra because he is such a beta soy, kid. And I'm like, shut up. At some point in time, you need some discipline. Y'all don't understand the concept of consequences. Maybe this is what a participation trophy culture has bestowed upon us. But man, I can remember back when I was doing a lot of work in Hollywood, I was having lunch or dinner with my manager out there who had gotten red pilled himself. He was an Obama supporter. He was in the sitcom world, comedy world. And he had an intern working for him named Fred. Fred was a black guy, super great guy, but he grew up similar to, as you stated with your background, he grew up Democrat. That's all he ever knew in his family. We're having dinner one night and he says, my family is Democrat. That's all I've ever known. And that's what I know. That's the world I know. This is what I've been brought up with. And I can remember Arthur saying to him over dinner, he said, Fred, that'll all change as soon as you make some money. He said, that's going to change. But I think right now what the left is doing with so many of these people who are thoughtless and mindless, particularly with minority communities especially, we've seen this historically and it's happening now, they keep dangling that carrot, everything from other social programs to reparations to all these things to make sure that they don't ever come out of a place of saying, hey, I need some conservatism in my life to protect what I've earned. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, can we as conservatives remove some of those obstacles to make people believe that, hey, you do have freedom of opportunity here in this country? Or is that a myth? Do people really have an opportunity to be what they need to be with a little hard work and critical skills?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we wouldn't see millions of people lined up at the border, particularly a lot of, it's pretty much 50 Shades of Brown lined up at our border coming to this country because they know that this is the land of the free and all this opportunity. I came from a terrible, I shouldn't say terrible background. My mom would be so mad if I said that. But we were definitely lower working class, and I'm not rich yet, but I'm working very hard to get to where I want to be because this is a free and equal country. And like you were saying earlier, it's like there's a lot of people when they start making money, they start to understand how money works. They understand economy and taxes and all these different things. So they inherently want these more conservative values and conservative principles, because then you have the left pushing things like socialism. And what people need to be educated on is all socialism is trying to do is make us all equally broke, poor, and miserable, just like the people who start with socialism in every other country, which ultimately leads to communism. And then the same type of authoritarian regime that a lot of these progressives are afraid of, you're supporting that by being these progressives. And that was one of the things that I had to wake up from. It's like when I was getting my whole red pill journey, and I used to be a democratic socialist, but that was just because I wanted everything to be free. I was a broke college kid. My refrigerator was dirty and white. My pillows were flat, and my mattress was on the floor. I was ready for my situation to change. So I wanted the handouts. I wanted the reparations. I wanted all of that. But now you look back, I'm able to look back at it, and I see how things like reparations are just going to destroy our economy, and they don't make sense to begin with. You have a lot of opportunity here in America, and being a person of color, technically, I have more privileges because there are more people going out of their way to hire people of color. They're giving scholarships more to people of color. The bar to get into college is lower. You can score like 150 points lower on average as a black person than a white person on the SAT and still get into the same program. So it's like people need to recognize how our economy and how our world actually works. And I think they're starting to, not because they want to, but because they feel the inflation, they feel the pressure around them, and they feel everybody around them being miserable.
Yeah. I was just having a conversation with somebody, and they made the point about, we probably should be thankful that this administration got placed where they did at this time, because if we'll open our eyes, it really does expose us to the ills that are being foisted upon us as a culture and as a society. I mean, it's almost like a warning sign of where we could go as a country, as a nation, if we continue to embrace these wild ideologies that produce nothing. You take reparations, they're never going to give anyone enough to climb out. They were floating these ideas about giving people in California all these millions of dollars. They're not going to do that because they need you to be dependent upon them. They want a society that's dependent on this big blob government that consumes everything. They're never going to let people escape that deal with a handout, right? So I don't know. I hope people are opening their eyes. It's a frightening thing, man. I mean, listen, you've been there. You've been there. You've seen it. You've seen the videos from October 7th. You saw the atrocities committed by Hamas. There's a lot of debate out there. People say, well, Hamas was created by Israel, and that was created by the West. Listen, I'm the first one to say the governments of men are evil. As long as men are running things, they're evil. So I don't care if it's America, it's Israel, it's whoever it may be. There's evil people in the world, and therefore they're going to have, that sinful nature connected to it. But you've seen the atrocities. You've seen those videos, and anybody that wants to take an open, critical look out there and see the evil that exists in this world, I don't want that happening in this country. I don't want us to stop being exceptional, right? I don't want us to stop being strong because I believe that we kind of are. We have been historically that adhesive glue that's kind of held the globe together. And we have this perfectly good Constitution that the left is, wiping their rear ends with it, walking all over. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of people, Republicans are doing the same thing. If we're going to play political games on the parties, but they're both doing the same thing. How far is it before we are just absolutely full-blown embracing evil? Because we're getting awfully close.
That's a good question. I do think that we're really close. I think, I hate to play the game of the one side is so much worse than the other, but in a lot of ways the left is, even though in some ways they're kind of like a uniparty. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation. But, a lot of people are just embracing pure evil. We're funding, like one of the things I have like an issue with America right now is how much we're funding the terrorism. We are funding both sides of multiple wars. It's like, why did we give so many billions of dollars to Iran? What did we think Iran was going to do with $6 billion besides fund terrorism? Like, that's obvious. Like, they wanted to get their they're come back at us. So they funneled that money over to Hamas. And it wouldn't make sense for Israel to create Hamas because the devastation that Israel has gone through and the trauma that their people have endured, there's no amount of money or power that is worth putting your own people through that. So I think that's super far-fetched. But, the evil in the world is becoming more and more apparent right now. And I was saying for a while, like when it goes to October 7th, what I had to change my perspective on, especially after I visited there my second time, is we have to stop calling things like terrorism and what Hamas did inhumane, because really what it is it shows how far man is willing to go in order to get a principle across or to gain power, or if it's for some type of religious extremism, people will do very vile things. That is the dark side of human nature. So we need more people to actually use their conscience and their brain and stop supporting this evil that we're seeing all over the world.
Yeah, and it is, it's I've had to sit back. I've been outspokenly supportive of fighting terror. If it takes Israel to fight Hamas, and Hamas is an evil terrorist organization, and Iran is obviously the number one state exporter and supporter of terror in the world today. I'm amazed that so many people, they spend their time and their energy speaking out against Israel. And like I said, I qualify it by saying I know all governments of men have done evil things. They've done things that we don't agree with. They've done atrocities. America has committed atrocities. I have no doubt. But like you can't. How in the world these people have gotten to a point now? These protesters, they're not saying they're pro-Palestine. They're saying they're pro-Hamas at this point. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm literally hearing that rhetoric. And when you talk about from the river to the sea, you're talking about genocide. You're talking about wiping a people off the map. And then you hear certain conservatives start to chime in on this. What in the world's going on, dude? I mean, like, where do we come down on this thing? What's the right side of history for this whole deal?
It's getting harder and harder to know that. And, like you said, the river to the sea thing, people are chanting that like at UCLA, not realizing what that means. I'm like, which river, first of all? Right. Which sea are you even talking about? You don't even know the context of what it is that you're actually saying. And it's ironic, too, when you see the progressives being so in favor of the Palestinians, because Israel is the one area in the Middle East that would be accepting of a lot of these progressives and a lot of the values that they have. So it's it just shows how much propaganda can really mutate somebody's brain and the way that they think, to the point where they're just not looking at the bigger picture at all. But right now what we're seeing is it's very much that horseshoe theory in effect. It's like you go too far right, you have these people who want to blame Jews for all their problems, for everything bad that's ever happened in history. It's like that alt-right type of scenario. Then you got the far left, where if you go so far left, you end up with these socialists who are really just communists, and who was a huge communist, and like the Nazism, like Adolf Hitler. So it's like people try to attribute Adolf Hitler to the far right, but really he was the far left. So those two sides have this now middle ground of just hating Jews. But when you support that premise and you support groups like Hamas, what you're doing is you're rooting for the death of America, which a lot of, again, these protesters are literally chanting death to America. It's like, I wonder who taught them that. Oh yeah, the terrorists that they're sympathizing with. But it's a really scary thought, because not only does Hamas want to take out the Jews and the Christians and the Israeli Muslims of Israel, but in their charter since 1988, they have been on a mission to take out Jews and Christians worldwide. It does not just stop with Israel. It will then eventually translate to that extremism being here, because good and well that BLM, if they had the power behind them and the resources and enough extremists behind them back in 2020, they would probably be doing things just as devastating as what Hamas was doing over in Israel and continues to try to do in Israel. So when you see those groups emerging, that's a very dangerous, slippery slope that is more like a plunge to hell that we're watching unfold right now.
Well, as you said you grew up in the south side of Chicago, right? That's a notorious area for violence, gang violence, a total disregard for human life. It's territorial. That disregard for human life on so many levels that we're seeing in our world today, particularly in this country, that's a recipe for disaster when you add a certain ideology to that disregard that can erupt into violence and say, You see the video from October 7th. Those folks were murdering people, raping people with zero conscience whatsoever, literally bragging about how many they had killed. It was unconscionable when you see it. These people's hearts were so hardened. And you're right, I agree with that. You take the BLM riots, you take that, you give them the resources committed with the ideology, and we're on dangerous, slippery ground, man. That's a scary world to think about living in right here in this country. When we have protesters on college campuses calling for the beheading of school administrators and school presidents, people have asked me, they're like, why would you support Donald Trump? I said, well, I tell you this. I said, there's two groups of people in America right now. Some say God bless America, and others say death to America. And I can tell you which side is saying death to America. I pointed this out years ago that every time, a group of Iranians get together in the streets in Tehran, they're chanting death to America. And they're like, well, that's a tradition. That's what they've always done. I'm like, well, it ain't a tradition I'm fond of. And now they're saying it in our streets and college campuses. So I tend to turn a distasteful eye towards people that are shouting death to America. But I honestly believe that's what these people want. You give them the resources mixed with a dangerous ideology. This is where we are. Jerry Seinfeld gets on stage. They're honoring him with an honorary doctorate at this university, and all the pro-Palestinian students get up and leave. I mean, really, Jerry Seinfeld?
Yeah.
This is crazy world we're living in. What do you make of this stuff?
It's just, first of all, that's just so disrespectful and unnecessary and just narcissistic and selfish, because what you did is that you just brought all this negative energy to something that was supposed to be a very positive celebration, not only for you, but for your classmates, for Jerry, for everybody involved, for the faculty. So to just walk out because this person has a different ideology from you is just so ignorant. But I mean, that's just the place that we're in, where these people don't care about anything besides the cause that they're fighting for, with no idea what they're actually talking about. It's like, you're celebrating death to America. It's like, where else are you going to go? Where are you going to be comfortable? Where are you going to have the privileges to do what you do here in America over there? Because they want to kill everybody in the West. So if you want to get to where you can't even show your ankles anymore without getting beheaded, power to you. But it's getting very problematic how insane these people have just become.
No, it's insane.
It's sad to see.
It's sad. It is sad. It's tragically sad, because the consequences are devastating, and it's only going to get worse, unfortunately.
And it's getting worse because of the system that they're putting in place. Where I was talking to, especially over at the border, I've been talking to a lot of police officers lately and just seeing what their perspective is of everything going on. And when I was at UCLA, I talked to campus security, I talked to UCPD, and I talked to LAPD. And what all of them unanimously said is where the laws are in place to where they can enforce the law, the policies either from the department or the instructions that they're getting are counteracting that, and vice versa. When the policy is saying that we need to enforce the law and stop this chaos from happening, then the law doesn't allow it in a state like California. Because I saw the police were called, and this girl from the pro-Palestine side, she was trying to tase somebody, literally chase this Jewish man around. I have it on camera, trying to tase him. Took 45 minutes for the police to get there, and when they got there, they were told, do not interact with anybody from the encampment. So literally what they're being told, even though the law says that you need to crack down on this and crack down on this musty terrorism that we're watching happening, you instead are supposed to sit back and just allow anarchy to happen. And that's like the growing theme of what's happening in America, where the criminals are protected more than the innocent civilians.
When you infiltrated, I'll use that phrase, when you infiltrated the protest there, where was it? UCLA, right?
Yeah.
Was it students, or were there other agitators there? Were you able to tell a difference?
So there were two different nights where I was getting videos and footage from. When I went and I snuck into the encampment, I was shocked by how many faculty members I saw there. They even had signs saying that the faculty stands against Zionism and all these different things. Then you had some people who were definitely not in college anymore, just there to help kind of run the organization that was funding this entire encampment. And then you had a lot of students who just didn't know what was going on. The second day, there started to be some rumblings that there was going to be some pushback from the other side. So then they started bringing in the big dogs. And I have videos where they all of a sudden went from being just a whole bunch of little soy boys who can't do a push-up to now you have these very large Arab men who have come, or I don't know what they were. Let me not assume they're Arab, but whatever they were, these very large men who did not speak the clearest English who were there all of a sudden. I'm like, who brought you over here to UCLA? I'm like, you're 40 years old, you barely speak English, you're clearly not a student, and you're not faculty. Where are you coming from? And then I realized that they're agitators. They're people who are literally brought here to escalate the situation, to take these metal rods that they had over in the encampments and hitting people. And then you have, I believe it was, if it wasn't Colombia, it was somewhere in New York recently, where they arrested 300 different people from their encampments and their protests. And majority of them weren't even students. They were just agitators. So a lot of these people, they're being brought in to help push this anarchy. And we need to be cracking down on that too. I think it's at the point where they need to start guiding or like gatekeeping who's even allowed on campus at this point.
Yeah. And it fascinates me, the rhetoric that's coming out of some of these interviews. You know, people saying, well, I don't really know why we're here. You know, you had those couple of girls a few weeks ago. I don't really know. Do you know what we're here for? I don't really know. That's fascinating. And then the people who are making the demands, like the one girl, you know, got the guy standing behind her in the crop top and his shamag scarf. And she's saying, well, we don't want anyone to violently hinder anyone bringing food or water in here. Of course, my take on that was like, no, I think we should just starve you out. I mean, it's amazing how many of these fat people are on a starvation diet now on these protests. And I'm like, you guys could live off the fat of the land for 6 weeks. But I mean, it's amazing to watch. The jokes write themselves, dude. But I'm like, you know, you're not entitled to any of this stuff. So I'm just wondering if these college student non-thinking morons are the face of this, how many people behind it, as you say, the agitators that are showing up, how is that going to spill into the streets as we head into what I'm branding, you know, Summer of Love 2.0, 2024? Do you think we're going to see more of that escalate into the streets, or will it be kind of maintained on college campuses? What's your prediction?
My honest prediction, I think we have not even scratched the surface of how crazy things are going to get. I have this hunch that it's going to be in either June or July. I don't want to put anything that I haven't been able to verify yet, but I'm hearing all kind of rumors and rumblings that things are very much going to escalate in the coming months. I don't know if it's going to be pertaining to the war or if it's just going to be the regroup that these like the encampments, which was like the big warning shot. I feel like it's just a matter of time before they're trying to loot and riot and do all these different things. So I tell people, this is a really good time for you to stock up on guns and ammo. Not saying to be violent. I'm just saying you need to protect you and yours. You need to be able to protect your businesses and anything around you, because it's going to get ugly. I think it's going to get very ugly. I think the left is going to try to pull something really slick, especially you already see they're trying to put Trump in jail, but it's like, what next? They're trying all these different things. It's not quite hitting. It's not quite bringing them the voters that they want. And, you know, Joe Biden, he's doing this thing right now where he's shooting himself in both feet, where he's sending money to Israel, but then sending support towards the pro-Palestinian crowd. It's like that middle ground is really rocky water for you to be on, Mr. Biden. It looks like he's hemorrhaging votes one way or another. But I can tell you, if you planned on voting Republican, you're not changing that anytime soon based on the way that our economy is. So they're going to pull something slick. I don't know exactly what, but something's bound to happen. So I'm prepared for everything.
Yeah, I've told our audience to keep your head on a swivel even more so now. I'd be very careful about certain public places where you go. Just in simplest terms, I'd be careful. If you're going to the mall, going to a concert, going to a sporting event, I'd be careful. Going to church, you know, people that are going to their synagogue, I'd be very, very aware of your surroundings. I think we're living in dangerous days. You know, it's scary. And people are doing it without any hesitation. You saw the video out of New York where the guy threw a belt over the girl's neck and drug her behind the car and raped her between the two cars. You know, the smash and grab thing that's going on. And I'm like, these people are just, there's people out there, man, it's scary. It's scary what they're willing to do. And it's an election year. Year. So we always know that certain things are going to happen. You know, the Democratic National Convention is going to be in Chicago. At least that's what they're planning. We'll see if they keep it there. You know, and
they have a lot of security.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, they usually around something like that, they usually have about a 5-mile radius of security. So I don't know how close people will try to get there. But this is interesting to me because this isn't like we're seeing a lot of people on the left start to eat their own. The college protests against the college campus, both are institutions of the left, right? Joe Biden, this administration is an institution of the left, and they're really calling him out. So I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I'm very cautious and very aware of what's going on. You mentioned coming out of the background that you did. Dare I ask, and you could tell me to mind my own business, dare I ask how your family responds to you at this point in time?
That's once again all of the above. I have family members I haven't spoken to in years. Like my eldest brother, he's very much a leftist, particularly my issues with the border being wide open. With police brutality, he takes issue with. So we saw each other for the first time in 3 years. He looked me right in the eye and turned around.
Wow.
I have cousins who claim that I'm a part of the KKK and basically heavily implied for me to not even come to one of our other cousins' funerals because they said that they would never want a white supremacist there, as if that would benefit me. I'm the blackest person in LA County. So it's a bit of just, it's sad, but it's something that I've accepted. My dad and I didn't even speak for 2 years, but we finally made amends, and like now we just don't talk politics. But on the bright side, I do have certain people in my family who have come around. I have some people in my family who were saying everything from, I've always thought this way, I've just hid it because I didn't want to be the black sheep of the family. And then I have people like my cousin who has come over to the right side of history because now she's starting to realize how miserable and angry we all were back when we were progressive liberals. And then I feel like the one I'm most proud of is my mom is starting to see common sense. I was with her for Christmas and she said to me, she goes, "Hey, Xavier, what does just gender fluid mean?" And I was like, well, it means that sometimes you can wake up and be a girl. And the next day, if you wake up and you feel a little manlier that day, that you're a boy. And then there's some days when you're neither. You're just not a gender. You're non-binary. And she goes, oh. I'm like, what do you think of that? She goes, baby, I come from a different time. And I'm like, and I want you to know, if you keep voting for Joe Biden, you keep supporting the leftists and the progressives, this is what they talk about. They say that you can change your gender based on the hour, based on the minute. I'm like, it doesn't make sense, right? And she goes, it doesn't. I'm like, exactly. It's common sense at this point. And there are people who are going to try to force you to believe it. Because the thing about the black community is inherently we're a very conservative group of people, but we've been lied to for so long that we've been brainwashed into thinking that we're leftists, and people are starting to wake up to that. So it's getting better.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of people that are historically communities that have embraced faith, whether it is the Hispanic community or much of the black community, are starting to see through a lot of that. Because again, it violates so much of how they grew up in terms of, church or whatever their faith traditions were. So I'm hopeful in regards to various things, but I just want people to think critically. I really do. Yeah. And Xavier, I know without knowing, you and I have never talked about this, but I can only imagine what you get in your inbox, your DMs. I can only imagine the hate-filled rhetoric. See, the person, whether it's family or not, the person that you've described, the fact that you're sitting here talking with a white guy from Texas that grew up in Georgia, they would look at that and say, see, look, we told you about Xavier. He's KKK. We told you. He's a white supremacist, which is the dumbest thing in the world. I saw D.L. Hughley's tweet. I retweeted this the other day. D.L. Hughley, been doing comedy for 40 some odd years. I'm in the comedy world. And he was talking about how, we never see police brutality. He said, we see it against all of these people. We never see it against white supremacists. And I'm like, D.L., you've been doing comedy for 45 years in every city in America. You have never encountered a white supremacist. Like, you've been around the public your entire adult life as a very successful entertainer. You've never encountered a white supremacist. Stop with this. And that's the kind of logic where I'm like, quit. I mean, the KKK, really? What is it? What do they got? 300 members in this country at this point? I mean, it's a statistical non-entity. So it amazes me that kind of rhetoric keeps going on. But I can only imagine where the real hate rhetoric comes in. And I bet if you opened up your DMs right now, it's loaded with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people like whether it's the KKK or the far left, those people don't leave their basements. So it's very rare you're ever going to interact with those kind of people because they're sitting on a cold toilet seat in their grandmother's basement and it's full of black mold. I know the whole story there. And yeah, my DMs, it's a war zone in my DMs. Like you would think my DMs are the Gaza Strip. I go to my message requests and I'm just talking. It's just crazy. I should send you some screenshots. I don't even know if I could say it on this platform, the kind of things that people send me, but I get death threats every other week. I get cursed out. There's not a name in the book I haven't been called, but I'm at the point that it's like, amuse me with it. Like if I feel like I'm a pretty easy person to roast, I make a lot of messy content where it's like, if you're going to roast me good, make me laugh, say something creative. Don't call me a coon or Uncle Tom or a race traitor or a sellout. Like, get creative with it. Because I've already taken it and embraced it. I'm like, I'm Uncle Tom's favorite nephew. Now what? What's next? So it's like, just come up with something else. That's all I ask for.
Roast me. Do better.
Yeah.
Do
I like to
better.
laugh.
You know,
Roast me.
and I knew, you know, gosh, I became friends with Candace Owens back when she was doing videos in her attic and doing the myth of the coon and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what is this girl all about? You know, and I listened to it and I was like, well, she's making sense. Like I didn't understand the name of the thing. Now I get it. Because I was naive. I didn't realize, I grew up an athlete, man. I didn't think about in the deep South. Like my parents raised us to not see that kind of thing. We you know, I always joke about it. I said I traveled all over the country playing baseball, and you'd sleep, 4 grown men in 2 double beds in a hotel room on the road, and then get on the bus together, eat together, shower together. I mean, it was crazy, and it's like we didn't think about, what color anybody was or anything else. We were past all of that stuff. It just it wasn't a concern. And now it's like it's the forefront of every freaking conversation. And I'm like, God, it breaks my heart. It honestly breaks my heart that people just attack each other in the way that they do. But that's the nature of the game these days, man. It's a sad deal. And then you see, as you say, family being divided it's heartbreaking.
It is sad. It's like, it's something I pray about, but, I can only do so much trying to lead people to information. But it's like these things that for so long, people stopped caring about. People didn't care about what you were doing in your personal life, what your skin color was, these type of things, until they were forced to care again, until it was forced in everybody's face. And then it's like white people have this situation where it's like, I would be stressed out to be a white person. I feel like being black is a very easy life right now because white people, the rules change every day. It's like one day you're not supposed to see color, which I thought was a good thing. You saw people as who they are. But now they're saying, no, you have to see color because if you don't, you're ignoring racism. If you move in, it's gentrification. If you move out, it's white flight. If you're in culture, it's appropriation. But if you don't partake in culture, you're just a bigot. It's like you can't pick a struggle anymore. Yeah. It's like you literally can't win. And it's gotten to the point where it's like people are exhausted. And I do think that it's gone so far that it's starting to push back where people are forcing themselves to try not to care again because the only reason that they cared is because they were told to care so many times.
Yeah. I've triggered a lot of people over the years by saying I'm a straight white, conservative Christian male that wears a cowboy hat. And in a lot of videos, I've got a dog in the back seat. So I'm public enemy number one.
You got all the characteristics to trigger somebody. But I just find it funny if there was a community of people just like you, I'm a lot safer walking through there than I am walking through a hood in Chicago.
Well, it's true. It's true. This area that I live in, I grew up in the woods, right? I grew up in the country. I mean, I didn't have neighborhood friends because I didn't have a neighborhood. So we had to import friends and export me out of the woods, and my mother and my brothers and all them, they still live in those same woods in Georgia and nothing's changed. And we didn't think about certain things. And then as I got older and I went off to college, went to the University of Georgia, and my eyes were open to certain things, certain aspects that I was like, it's crazy. Like I didn't, and then I started traveling the world. I spent a lot of time in Africa and going to just third world countries and different places to see different things and educate myself. And I started realizing how great this country is and has the potential to continue being. And now I'm really concerned about so many different things that's just disconcerting. But I appreciate so much the honesty that you have, Xavier, because you're unashamed in saying, listen, this is where I was, this is who I was, this is how I behaved, and this is what I believed, and And I don't anymore. Like my producers and I, and it would be so unbelievable. We've kicked around the idea of just doing this prolonged sketch of Chad Prather decides to go woke and become a leftist progressive. And I'm just going to say, you know what? I can't make it as a conservative white man, so I just need to become an ally because maybe life would be easier. You know, maybe I could just get further in life by just being some. But I tell every black conservative male friend of mine that's out there, I'm like, you guys have it easy, dude. I tell Brandon Tatum, I've told even the Hodge twins, and they're like, we're not really black. And I was like, don't tell anybody that. Don't tell anybody. just let them believe that. Yeah, I know you got green eyes, but just still be black, okay? Because it's easier for you. So it's a funny point that you make on that deal. We laugh about it, but it's sad that that's the world we're living in. It really is, man.
Yeah, and it's funny because people will try to say that people like myself, the Hodge twins, and Officer Tatum, that we're grifters because we're black conservatives. It's like, do you realize how much more money and how much more access and opportunity and how much less censorship we would deal with if we were woke? Being a BLM activist, it's like I didn't even know that censorship was a thing. That was one of the biggest wake-up calls for me when I went from making woke content to making conservative content, is the algorithm was always on my side. My very first video when I was conservative, part of why it went viral is because I was in such good graces of TikTok. And TikTok pushed my video to the moon because it thought I was still woke. But then you come over to the conservative side, it's like, brands don't want to work with you. People disassociate with you. You go through hell as a conservative. And it's just so funny that of all people to call grifters, it's us who are going against the grain, sacrificing that money and opportunity versus the woke people who can't even tell you the accurate stats about what they're talking about.
Yeah. And I live that. I live that. When I was when I was in Hollywood and we were pushing sitcoms through, I was immediately labeled another Roseanne. That was when she did her Valerie Jarrett thing. And I've told Roseanne these stories. She laughs at it, but and then she has a few choice words about the people in Hollywood. But I've lived it because they were like, yeah, no, we know who you are and we're not interested in doing any work with you. It's just the reality. And half the country was being starved to death for entertainment from a conservative perspective. Hey, it's another thing that I do appreciate about folks like PragerU and guys like that. You guys, the messaging that PragerU puts out is so phenomenal and creative in the way that they do it. So I'm glad you're a part of that and part of that team. And I will ask you this because I know your time's precious. You got to go, and I'm so appreciative of you, man. It's so good to connect with you, and I'm hoping we can do some trips together, get together, and do some fun things. But you think a guy like Donald Trump this year? I mean, you think he's got a chance? Will they let him win? Can they let him win? What are your thoughts there? And before I ask you that, Xavier, how radical of a transit? I know you talk about coming from being a socialist Democrat BLM activist to having, you're kind of being red pilled, to use that phrase. But now a guy like Donald Trump and everything that's been said about him and all the accusations that are there of who he is as a person, and now you're thrust into that camp. Was that a hard pill to swallow?
That is funny. It's like I had to change my perspective on that a bit because so many people kept trying to put a lot of the same things that they lie about Trump for, they'll try to put that on me as well. And it's like my friend CJ Pearson always says the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing. I don't have time to sit here and debunk every single narrative about me. And I even tell like the Jewish community at large, I'm like, you can't spend more time explaining to people who you're not, that you don't get enough time to showcase who you are. So my focus is no longer on the narratives that people put on me. It's more of just, I'm going to live my values, I'm going to speak truth, and I'm going to keep it real. And when it comes to Donald Trump, I think he has a fantastic chance, unless they try to do something slick, which I'm watching them like a hawk because I feel like they are going to try to do something slick or slide Michelle Obama in or something like that. But, that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. But I do think he has a great chance. I think so many people have woken up, and the way a lot of people have woken up is what they'll try to do, similar to what I tried to do, is they're like, okay, well, if you're telling me Trump is racist, then let's go and try to find actual proof of that. And these people go in these huge deep dives. They spend hours and hours, days and days trying to find proof that Trump is racist, and they can never find the video. They can never find, like, they'll quote him, but it's like, where does the quote actually come from? Nobody can actually say where this quote is coming from. And that's how a lot of people here in Hollywood, because I live in Hollywood, a lot of people are waking up because they try to prove that Trump is racist. They try to prove that police brutality is real. They try to prove that the Palestinian area is a apartheid. They try to prove all these different things, and they can't because there's no substance to that argument. So the more people who try to do that, the more people we are going to see wake up. And I do think that we're coming for a huge win in November, but don't get comfortable because it's certainly a fight.
It's a fight. Xaviaer Durousseau. That is a very bourgeois name. I mean, that is high class right there.
Haitian bourgeoisie, that's my family. Or a portion of my family. Let me clarify that because someone called ICE on me because I stood against reparations saying that I'm not actually black because they say if you're Haitian descent, you're not, but I'm half Haitian.
Wow. You're from that French upper class, man.
I guess so.
Durousseau. It's a fancy
Souvelain
name.
Paris.
I love it. I want everybody to follow you. If they're not already, I want everybody to go find Xavier. We'll put it on the lower third there so that everybody can spell it right. And you're one of my favorite follows. I really appreciate you, man. And I'm so thankful for you, for your voice and just your honesty, and certainly thankful for your time on here today. What's next for you? You going back to Israel anymore? Any trips planned? What's going on? What's on your agenda as you head into the next few months into the summer?
And first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been a privilege and a huge opportunity. So thank you very much. And yeah, a lot of big things. I'm working on some huge projects. I have a handful of different shows I'm working on. I'm producing some huge things here at PragerU. I got a documentary in the works, a mini doc where we're exposing some of the crime happening in Chicago and the fact that you have nearly a 90% chance of getting away with murder in cities like Chicago now, and it's mostly harming young kids. I am going to Israel probably 2 more times this year. So a lot of huge things. I'm going to be updating everybody on my social media. My Instagram's at Xavier, Twitter's at XavierD. And yeah, it's going to be a huge summer. I'm very excited for the future.
Good. Well, stay safe, travel safe, and I'm going to catch up with you at some point in time. We might be on one of those trips with you. You never know. I'm looking forward to it. My schedule just stays so crazy that with doing live shows on the weekend, it's like, man, I'm missing out on some really fun things and some opportunities, educational opportunities, really. Because nobody's getting educated at my shows. I promise you that. Nobody. Cutting up. Man, thank you. Stay safe, brother. And it's great to connect with you, dude. I'm just so happy, so thankful for you, and I really appreciate the time. You guys go follow him, check him out, and keep up with his content. Hey, guys, I want you to leave us a rating and review where podcasts are offered. Drop me a line, chad@thechadprathershow.com, or send me your email address. We'd love to have you on our weekly newsletter, thechadprathershow.com. Join the family, and we will keep you abreast of all the things that are going on from my quirky brain. And so on behalf of Xaviaer Durousseau, thank you guys for tuning in and being a part of what we're doing here at the Chad Prather Show. In the meantime, we will talk to you next time. Thank you. God bless. See you then.